Hey everyone, I'm Peter Stories here to guide you today. If you use this video to drift off to sleep, please tap like, hit subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is there. Now settle in, get cozy, and let yourself relax. My name is Daniel, and I should have forgotten the case of Nicole Brennan, but something kept pulling me back to that cursed section of Yellowstone's backcountry, like a fishhook buried deep in my chest. It was October 15th, 2018, 3 months since I'd last stepped foot on the Shoshone Lake Trail, where Nicole had vanished without a trace during her solo camping trip. 3 months since my supervisor had officially closed the case due to lack of evidence and exhausted resources. 3 months since I'd failed her family completely. The morning air bit through my standard issue fleece as I stood at the trailhead at 5:47 a.m., my breath forming small clouds that dissipated into the pre-dawn darkness. My iPhone 8 showed 17 missed calls from Nicole's mother, Sarah Brennan, all from the past week. Each voicemail more desperate than the last. Please, Daniel. I know everyone else has given up, but I feel it in my bones that she's still out there. Please don't abandon my baby girl. That familiar electric tingling crawled up my spine. The same sensation I'd felt as a kid when thunderstorms were still hours away. 23 years as a park ranger had taught me to trust that feeling. It had saved my ass more times than I could count, warning me about unstable rock faces, approaching grizzlies and tourists about to do something spectacularly stupid. But this feeling was different. Darker, like standing too close to a downed power line, the air itself seeming to vibrate with malevolent energy. I adjusted the weight of my patrol pack, 42 pounds of emergency gear, GPS unit, satellite radio, medical supplies, and enough food for 3 days. My Garmin eTrex Vista showed coordinates N44 DIG 2145, W110 DIG 34812, exactly where Nicole's abandoned campsite had been discovered by a pair of day hikers on July 18th. The beam of my maglite cut through the morning gloom as I started down the trail, my Vask boots finding familiar purchase on the worn path. Every step felt heavier than it should, as if the forest itself was trying to turn me around. The normal sounds were all wrong. No bird calls, no rustling of small mammals, just an oppressive silence that made my ears ring. By 7:23 a.m. I'd covered the first 2 miles to Shoshone Creek. The familiar landmarks looked subtly different somehow. The old lightning-struck pine that served as a navigation marker seemed to lean at a different angle. The creek's usual babbling had become a low, almost human whispering that raised the hair on my forearms. My radio crackled with static as I tried to check in with dispatch. Unit 47 to base, radio check over. Nothing but electronic snow. I pulled out my iPhone, no signal bars, which was normal this deep in the backcountry. But the battery showed 23% even though I'd charged it to full capacity before leaving. The screen flickered with horizontal lines that reminded me disturbingly of stitching patterns. The tingling sensation in my spine intensified as I approached the coordinates of Nicole's last known position. My hands started trembling, not from cold, but from something primal screaming at me to turn around and run. 23 years of training kept my boots moving forward. Nicole's official campsite had been a small clearing 30 yards off the main trail, marked by a fire ring built from river stones. When we'd found it in July, her north face tent had been perfectly set up, sleeping bag laid out as if she'd just stepped away for a moment. No signs of struggle, no blood, no torn fabric caught on branches. She'd simply vanished. But now, standing in the exact same spot with my GPS confirming the coordinates, I saw something that made my knees buckle. Hanging from the lower branches of a massive ponderosa pine were dozens of items I'd never seen before. Children's dolls, their plastic limbs positioned in unnatural angles. Crude scarecrows made from sticks and moss, and threaded between them all, an intricate web of what looked like fishing line. But as I got closer, my stomach lurched. It wasn't fishing line, it was sinew, human sinew, braided and woven into complex patterns that hurt my eyes to follow. Each strand glistened wetly in the morning light as if recently used. If this story is giving you chills, Smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Daniel's situation? Comment below. My maglite beam followed one of the sinew strands as it disappeared deeper into the forest, leading away from the trail toward a section of woods I'd somehow never noticed before. The trees there grew closer together, their branches intertwined overhead to form an almost solid canopy that blocked out the sky. Jesus Christ, I whispered, my voice sounding obscenely loud in the unnatural quiet. That's when I heard it, a sound that made my blood turn to ice water in my veins, humming. A child's lullaby coming from somewhere in those dark woods, but with an underlying wetness that suggested a mouthful of blood. Every survival instinct I'd developed screamed at me to key my radio, call for backup, retreat to safe ground. But Nicole was out there, had been out there for 3 months, and that humming. Christ, what if it was her? I started toward the sound, each step requiring conscious effort to overcome my body's revolt against moving deeper into those shadows. The sinew strands grew thicker as I followed them, some as wide as my thumb, all of them slick with a substance I didn't want to identify. The humming grew louder, more distinct. It was Rockabye Baby, but wrong. The melody kept skipping notes, repeating phrases, as if the singer couldn't quite remember how it went. 30 yards into the shadowed woods, I found the source. A clearing maybe 20 feet across, ringed by enormous pines whose trunks showed scars, deep gouges that looked almost like claw marks, but too regular, too deliberate. And suspended between the trees, my flashlight beam revealed Nicole Brennan's face, eyes wide and tracking my movement with desperate intelligence. She was alive. After 3 months, she was somehow still alive. But the rest of her, the entity that had taken her, had positioned her body like a marionette, arms and legs bent into impossible angles and held in place by countless stitches that pierced through skin, muscle, and bone. Thick black thread, the same sinew I'd been following, wove through her flesh in decorative patterns, holding her suspended 3 feet off the ground. Her mouth had been sewn partially shut, leaving just enough room for those haunting lullaby fragments to escape. She wasn't alone. Arrayed around the clearing like some nightmare puppet show were at least a dozen other victims, all stitched into grotesque poses. A middle-aged man sewn into a permanent salute, eye sockets empty but somehow still weeping thin streams of blood. A teenage girl twisted into a dancer's pirouette, her spine clearly broken in multiple places but held upright by the obscene needlework. Children, God, there were children, positioned like they were playing games, their small bodies held in mockeries of laughter and joy. All of them were still alive. All of them were still conscious. Their eyes tracked my movements with the desperate hope of the damned. From somewhere behind the ring of living dolls came a voice like rustling leaves and clicking needles. A new visitor. How wonderful. I've been waiting for someone to appreciate my collection. I spun toward the sound, my maglite beam sweeping across the clearing until it found the source. What I saw there wasn't entirely human anymore, though it might have been once. The thing stood maybe 7 feet tall, its limbs elongated and jointed in too many places. Its fingers had been replaced with bone needles that wept a constant stream of dark fluid. Its face, Christ. Its face was a patchwork of different skin tones and features, sewn together with the same black sinew that bound its victims. "I am the seamster," it said, its voice a harmony of whispers from different throats. "I collect the beautiful ones, the lost ones, the forgotten ones. I preserve them forever in moments of perfect expression." The thing gestured toward Nicole with one needle finger, and I saw her try to scream through her sewn lips. This one has been particularly expressive. Such lovely songs she sings, but she grows lonely, I think. Perhaps you would like to join my permanent exhibition. The seamster took a step toward me, and I finally understood what that electric feeling in my spine had been warning me about. This thing radiated wrongness like heat from a forge, an assault on reality itself that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. But looking at Nicole, seeing the desperate plea in her eyes, I felt something else rise up to meet that supernatural dread. Rage. Pure, white-hot fury at what had been done to her, to all of them. I dropped my flashlight and grabbed the Glock 22 from my duty holster, putting 3 rounds center mass into the seamster's patchwork torso. The .40 caliber rounds punched through its chest but didn't slow it down. Instead, they seemed to excite it. "Yes," it hissed, dark fluid spurting from the bullet holes. Struggle, fear, such beautiful expressions to add to my collection. The thing rushed at me with impossible speed, needle fingers reaching for my throat. I rolled left, came up running, and made it maybe 10 steps before something wrapped around my ankle and yanked me face first into the forest floor. One of the sinew strands, the bastard could control them. More threads whipped through the air like striking snakes, wrapping around my wrists, my waist, my neck. They lifted me off the ground with casual strength, positioning me spread eagle in the center of the clearing. The seamster approached slowly, savoring the moment. "Such a lovely specimen," it crooned, running one needle finger along my cheek and leaving a thin trail of blood. "A protector, a guardian. I think I'll position you as a shepherd, watching over my flock for eternity." That's when Nicole made a sound, a keening wail that somehow penetrated her sewn lips and cut through my terror like a blade. She was trying to tell me something, her eyes darting frantically between me and something behind the seamster. I followed her gaze and saw it, a pile of discarded camping gear and personal effects. Nicole's North Face jacket, a child's Spider-Man backpack, and scattered among the debris, dozens of cell phones in various states of decay. But one of them, a newer iPhone like mine, still had its screen lit up. Emergency SOS. The feature that activated when you held the power and volume buttons simultaneously. Someone had managed to trigger it before being taken, which meant the distant thrum of helicopter rotors echoed through the forest canopy, growing louder by the second. Search and rescue, following the GPS ping from the emergency beacon. The seamster's head snapped toward the sound, its patchwork face twisting into an expression of rage. "No, no, they cannot have you. My collection will not be disturbed." It spun back toward me, needle fingers raised to begin its grisly work. But in its fury, it had made a mistake. The sinew bonds holding me had loosened slightly. I twisted my right hand free and grabbed the folding knife from my belt, flicking it open and slashing at the threads holding my other arm. The sinew parted like wet rope, spilling me back to the ground in a heap. The helicopter was directly overhead now, its searchlight cutting through the canopy in brilliant white beams. Radio chatter crackled from the discarded phones. "This is Teton County SAR. We have emergency beacon activation at coordinates." The seamster let out a shriek of pure hatred and lunged at me again. But this time, I was ready. I rolled aside and came up with my Glock, putting the remaining rounds into its head at point-blank range. The creature staggered but kept coming, needle fingers slashing wildly. I grabbed my maglite from the ground and swung it like a club, the heavy aluminum body connecting with the thing's skull with a wet crunch. It went down hard, dark fluid pooling around its ruined head. But even as it fell, its needle fingers were still moving, still trying to stitch, still driven by an inhuman compulsion to add me to its collection. I stomped on its skull with the heel of my boot, again and again, until the bone needles finally went still. The helicopter had found a landing spot nearby and I could hear voices calling through the trees. "Park Service, identify yourself." "Daniel Morrison, Yellowstone Law Enforcement," I shouted back. "I've got multiple casualties requiring immediate medical evacuation." But as I turned back to Nicole and the others, my blood turned cold. The moment the seamster had died, all the sinew threads holding them in their grotesque poses had gone slack. They were collapsing to the ground like broken marionettes, months of malnutrition and supernatural preservation finally catching up with them. Nicole hit the dirt in a tangle of limbs, the stitches in her mouth tearing free as she tried to speak. Blood bubbled from her lips as she whispered, "Thank you." I knelt beside her, cradling her head as gently as I could while the SAR team crashed through the undergrowth toward us. "You're okay," I lied, knowing she could see the truth in my eyes. "You're going to be okay." She managed a small smile, the first genuine expression her face had been allowed to make in 3 months. "I knew you'd come back." The last thing she said before the EMTs took over was, "There are more, other places in the forest, other collections." Nicole survived, though she'll never fully recover from what was done to her. 6 of the other victims were still alive when we found them, though 2 didn't make it to the hospital. The seamster's body was quietly removed by a federal team that asked very few questions and gave even fewer answers. But Nicole was right about one thing. We found 3 more collections in remote areas of the park over the past year, all of them empty but showing clear signs of the seamster's work. Whatever that thing was, it wasn't unique. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror, and comment your theory about what really happened to Nicole. I read every single one. And sometimes, late at night when I'm alone on patrol, I still feel that electric tingling in my spine. The forest is trying to tell me something. I'm just not sure I want to listen. My name is Michael, and I've been a forest ranger for 17 years. I've pulled bodies out of ravines, found lost hikers 3 days past hypothermic, and seen things that would make most people quit and move to the city. But nothing, absolutely fucking nothing, prepared me for what happened to Samantha Chen on October 13th, 2018. I was 3 meters behind her on the Devil's Backbone Trail when she just vanished. Not walked away, not fell, not got grabbed by some lunatic hiding in the bushes. She was there 1 second, 22 years old, auburn ponytail bouncing, telling me about her graduate thesis on forest ecosystem recovery. And then she wasn't, like someone had hit delete on reality itself. The search started immediately. I called it in on my Motorola APX 6000, hands shaking as I keyed the mic. Unit 23 to dispatch, code yellow. Missing hiker at coordinates 44.1276 degree N, 121.7095 degree W. Last seen 1347 hours. Female, early 20s, pink hiking jacket, brown hair. But even as I spoke those words into the radio, something cold was crawling up my spine. Because in that split second before Samantha disappeared, I'd seen something in the puddle of rainwater beside the trail. A reflection that wasn't quite right. A face that smiled too wide, painted white with red lips stretched impossibly far. "Tick-tock, Ranger Mike," a voice had whispered from the water. "She's mine now." Hour 6 of search. My Garmin E-Trex showed we'd covered 12 square kilometers. Sheriff's Department brought in dogs. Volunteer search and rescue teams spread across the forest like ants. My radio crackled with position updates every 15 minutes. Team Alpha, negative contact, moving to Grid 7 Charlie. Team Bravo, found a granola bar wrapper bagging for evidence. But I couldn't stop staring at every reflective surface we passed. The dogs found Samantha's scent trail ending abruptly at Reflection Lake, a small tarn fed by underground springs that locals avoid after dark. Stories about the lake go back to the Warm Springs tribes, something about spirits that lived in the water and stole people who looked too long at their own faces. I'd always figured it was bullshit. Tourist campfire stories. Standing at the lake's edge, I watched search teams drag the dark water with poles and hooks. The surface was mirror smooth, perfectly reflecting the gray October sky. And there, rippling gently in the center, I saw her. "Samantha!" I screamed, lunging toward the water. Strong hands grabbed my arms. "Whoa, Michael. Easy, brother." It was Jake Reeves from SAR Team 2, his weathered face creased with concern. "There's nothing there, man. Just your reflection." But I'd seen her. Pink hiking jacket, terror-wide eyes, mouth moving silently behind the glass-like surface. She'd been reaching up toward me, desperate, drowning in liquid mirror. "She's in there," I whispered, pointing at the still water. I saw her. "She's trapped." The other searchers exchanged glances. The kind of looks you give someone who's losing his shit. "Mike," Jake said gently, "you've been out here 6 hours without water. When's the last time you ate? Come on, let's get you back to base camp." I let them lead me away, but I kept looking back at the lake, and in every puddle we passed, in every fragment of broken glass, in the black screen of my iPhone when it went to sleep, I saw Samantha. Sometimes she was screaming, Sometimes she was reaching, sometimes she was pointing behind me. Hour 14 of search base camp hummed with activity under portable LED work lights. Incident command had set up in the ranger station parking lot. White tents and folding tables covered with maps, radios, and coffee urns. The air smelled of diesel generators and fear sweat. Ranger Thompson. Sheriff Martinez approached with a steaming cup and tired eyes. "How you holding up?" "Fine," I lied, accepting the coffee. It tasted like burnt metal and desperation. "Any word from the dive team?" "They've been down 3 times. Lake's deeper than we thought, maybe 40 feet in some spots, but no sign of her. No clothing, no gear, no body." He paused. "Mike, I gotta ask, are you sure about what you saw? Because the dogs, the divers, the search teams, it's like she never existed." But she had existed. I had her emergency contact information right there in my logbook. Parents in Portland, younger brother at Oregon State, boyfriend named David who'd already driven up from Eugene and was pacing the parking lot like a caged wolf. "She's real," I said. "She's out there." Martinez nodded, but I caught him making a subtle gesture to one of his deputies. The universal sign for keep an eye on this guy. I excused myself and walked to my Ford F-150, needing space to think. But when I looked at the side mirror to check my appearance, Samantha was sitting in my passenger seat. "Help me, Michael," her reflection whispered, breath fogging the mirror from inside. "I'm scared. It's so cold here." I spun around. Empty seat, just my search pack and a half-eaten power bar. When I turned back to the mirror, a white-painted face grinned at me instead. Red lips, black diamonds painted around eyes that held too much knowledge and not enough humanity. "Having fun yet, Ranger Mike?" the clown asked, its voice echoing strangely. "She tastes like hope and vanilla chapstick." I stumbled backward, heart hammering against my ribs, but the mirror showed only my own pale, exhausted reflection now. That's when I noticed every vehicle in the parking lot, SUVs, trucks, emergency response vans, they all had mirrors and windows and chrome bumpers that reflected the work lights like dozens of watching eyes. Hour 20 of search. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Michael's situation? Comment below. The nightmares started when I finally crashed in the back of my truck around 3 a.m., but they weren't dreams, they were visitations. Every time I closed my eyes, I was standing in a place that looked like the forest, but wrong. Trees made of broken mirrors, their sharp leaves tinkling like wind chimes. A trail that reflected not the sky above, but an upside-down world where gravity worked in reverse. And there was Samantha, standing in a clearing made entirely of glass, pounding her fists against invisible barriers while dozens of clowns in tattered costumes danced around her like demented marionettes. 22 years old, the lead clown said, its voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. Prime age for desperation. They taste better when they're young and terrified. I woke up screaming at 4:17 a.m. according to my G-Shock, but I wasn't in my truck anymore. I was standing waist-deep in Reflection Lake, icy water soaking through my uniform pants. My flashlight beam danced across the surface, showing nothing but ripples. How the fuck had I gotten here? "Michael?" a voice called from the shoreline. I turned, relief flooding through me. It was Samantha, standing safe and dry on the bank, pink jacket intact. "Thank God," I gasped, struggling toward shore. "Everyone's looking for you. Are you hurt? What happened?" She smiled, but something was off about it. Too wide, too knowing. "I've been waiting for you," she said. "Come closer. I need to tell you something." That's when I realized she was standing directly on the surface of the water, not on solid ground. And her smile kept getting wider, stretching beyond what human facial muscles should allow. "Gotcha," she said in a voice like grinding glass. I backpedaled frantically, but my boots were stuck in the lake bottom sucking mud. The fake Samantha walked across the water toward me, her form rippling and distorting like a reflection in disturbed water. "You let me die," she accused, reaching out with fingers that had too many joints. "You were supposed to protect people, Michael, but you failed. You always fail. My radio crackled to life even though it was waterlogged. Unit 23, this is dispatch. What's your position? We have multiple teams requesting your status. The real world came rushing back. Dawn was breaking through the tree canopy. My uniform was soaked with freezing lake water, and I was completely, utterly alone. Hour 28 of search by afternoon of the second day, I'd become the problem. Mike, you need medical attention, Dr. Sarah Kim from the county crisis team said as she approached with careful, practiced steps. You're showing signs of severe sleep deprivation and possible hypothermia. When's the last time you remember eating? I was sitting on the tailgate of my truck, staring at a handheld mirror I'd found in Samantha's abandoned backpack. Her parents had driven up from Portland. Her mother kept crying into her husband's shoulder while he asked increasingly desperate questions about search protocols and probability matrices. She's in the mirrors, I told Dr. Kim. The clown has her trapped in some kind of reflection dimension. I can see her, but I can't reach her. The psychiatrist nodded with professional sympathy. Michael, grief and trauma can manifest in many ways. Visual hallucinations aren't uncommon in high-stress search and rescue situations. But we need to get you somewhere safe where you can rest and... I'm not hallucinating. The words exploded out of me with more force than I'd intended. Every head in base camp turned our way. Doctor, Kim took a step back, her hand moving instinctively toward the radio on her belt. Look, I said, holding up Samantha's compact mirror. Just look and tell me you don't see her. Dr. Kim glanced at the small circular glass. Her expression changed from professional concern to genuine confusion. What is that? She whispered. Because Samantha was there, pressed against the inside of the mirror like someone trapped underwater. Her mouth was moving frantically, trying to communicate something urgent. Behind her, barely visible, painted white faces leered and grinned. 7 more hours. A voice drifted from the mirror like wind through leaves. When the moon rises full, she becomes part of the collection forever. Tick-tock, Ranger Mike. Dr. Kim dropped the mirror. It hit the gravel with a sharp crack, spiderwebbing the glass. In each fragment, I could see a different angle of Samantha's terrified face. This isn't possible, Dr. Kim breathed. This violates every law of physics and psychology I know. But I was already moving, gathering my gear. Then we better break some laws. Hour 34. Of search, the mirror dimension. The answer came from Samantha's research notes found in her tent. She'd been studying local folklore for her thesis, documenting stories about the grinning man who lived in reflections and collected people who looked too long into still water. According to her interviews with tribal elders, the entity had been feeding on human souls for centuries, trapping them in a mirror world where they existed as reflections of themselves until they slowly forgot they'd ever been real. But there was a window, literally. Every month, during the new moon, the barrier between worlds thinned, and if someone who genuinely loved the trapped person looked into the water and willingly traded places, both souls could escape. The new moon was tonight. I returned to Reflection Lake at 11:47 p.m. alone. Base camp had officially called off the search 6 hours earlier, declaring Samantha presumed dead. Her parents had driven home to plan a memorial service. Only I knew she was still alive, still fighting, still hoping someone would save her. The lake surface was perfectly black under the moonless sky. I knelt at the water's edge and turned on my LED headlamp, creating a pool of light on the dark mirror. I'm here, Samantha, I called softly. I'm here to trade. The water rippled and she appeared, real, terrified, desperate. Behind her, the carnival of horrors swirled in slow, hypnotic patterns. Such devotion, the lead clown materialized beside her. Tell me, Ranger Mike, why do you care so much about one little girl you barely knew? Because it's my job to protect people, I said. Because she trusted me. Because no one deserves to be trapped in hell. Admirable, the clown sneered, but insufficient. Love, Michael, this prison only opens for love. Do you love her? The question hit me like a physical blow. Did I love Samantha? I'd known her for exactly 47 minutes before she disappeared. We'd talked about trees and trail maintenance and her research project. But watching her trapped behind that glass, seeing her fight against despair for day after day, witnessing her refuse to give up hope that someone would save her. Yes, I realized. I love her courage. I love her determination. I love that she trusted a stranger to keep her safe. The water began to glow with soft, silver light. Then step forward, Ranger Mike. Step into my world, and she goes free. I stood up, took a deep breath, and walked into Reflection Lake. The trade. The water should have been cold. Instead, it felt like walking through liquid starlight, warm and tingling against my skin. Reality twisted and folded, and suddenly I was standing in the mirror forest. Trees of broken glass, sky that reflected ground, gravity that pulled in impossible directions. Samantha stood 20 feet away, solid and real for the first time in days. Michael! She ran toward me and I caught her in my arms. She felt warm, alive, terrifyingly fragile. Are you okay? I asked, checking her for injuries. Did they hurt you? I'm fine, she said, crying with relief. But you shouldn't have come here. Now we're both trapped. Not trapped, the clown corrected, materializing beside us with a sound like breaking glass. Trading. One soul for another, as agreed. She leaves. You stay. Forever. The mirror world began to shift and change around us. I could feel it trying to remake me, to turn me into another reflection in its endless collection. Go, I told Samantha, pushing her toward what looked like a doorway of swirling water. Get out of here, she grabbed my hands. I won't leave you. How touching. But the bargain is struck. She goes free, you remain. Those are the terms. That's when I realized the clown had made a mistake. Because I wasn't just any soul, I was a forest ranger. I'd spent 17 years protecting these woods, learning every trail, every creek, every hidden grove. This forest was part of me, and I was part of it. And if this mirror dimension existed within my forest, then I had authority here. I invoke Ranger's privilege, I announced, standing straighter. This is federal land protected by the National Forest Service. I'm placing you under arrest for kidnapping, unlawful imprisonment, and violation of the Wilderness Act. The clown's painted smile faltered. That's not how this works. Section 16, USC 551. Forest Service personnel have authority to arrest any person who violates federal law within national forest boundaries. You're under federal jurisdiction, asshole. The mirror world began to crack and shatter like a dropped window. Reality reasserted itself in jagged pieces. This is impossible. The clown shrieked as its carnival of horrors began collapsing. I am ancient. I am power. I am trespassing, I finished, and your permit's expired. Dawn, reality. We tumbled out of the lake together, gasping and coughing up water that tasted like liquid silver. Samantha was solid, real, warm in my arms. The mirror world was gone, leaving only ordinary water reflecting ordinary sky. But as we stumbled toward shore, I caught our reflection in the lake's surface. Two people, alive and free. And behind us, barely visible in the depths, a white-painted face pressed against the underside of reality like something trapped behind glass. This isn't over, Ranger Mike, echoed faintly across the water. I'll be waiting in every reflection, every mirror, every puddle, every screen. I helped Samantha to her feet, pulling out my radio. Unit 23 to dispatch, I said, keying the mic with shaking hands. I have Samantha Chen, alive and uninjured. Request immediate medical assistance at Reflection Lake. Copy that, Unit 23, came the incredulous response. Say again, you have the missing hiker? Affirmative, case closed. As the rescue helicopters approached, their searchlights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness, Samantha grabbed my arm. Michael, she said quietly, the thing in the lake, will it try to take others? I looked back at the still water, then at my reflection in her frightened eyes. For just a moment, I thought I saw painted white features superimposed over my own face. "Not if I can help it," I said. But as we walked away from Reflection Lake, I made a mental note to put in a request for a trail closure and to avoid mirrors for a very long time. After all, some things are better left unreflected. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Samantha. I read every single one. My name is Michael, and I've been a forest ranger for 17 years. But after October 13th, 2018, I learned that some things in the wilderness are far more dangerous than bears, cliffs, or getting lost. Some things hunt using our own reflections against us, and some things are still watching from the other side of every mirror. My name is Joshua, and at 6:47 a.m. on October 15th, 2018, my radio crackled with the call that would change my life forever. Unit 47, we have a missing person report at Cascade Falls Trail. 22-year-old female, Megan Patterson, last seen yesterday evening around 7:30 p.m. Family just reported it. Over. I'd been a ranger at Mount Hood National Forest for 12 years, seen everything the wilderness could throw at you. Hypothermia, bear attacks, rock slides, flash floods, nothing fazed me anymore. My wife Sarah always joked I was made of granite, and she wasn't wrong. When other rangers called in sick during storms, I volunteered for extra shifts. When that hiker got mauled by a cougar 2 summers back, I was the one who tracked the animal down while my colleagues were still shaking. Fear wasn't in my vocabulary. At least, not until that morning. I grabbed my standard search and rescue pack, Motorola XTS 5000 radio, Garmin eTrex GPS, first aid kit, emergency blanket, MREs for 2 days. My boots, well-worn Danners that had logged over 1,000 miles of mountain trails, crunched through October frost as I headed to my truck. The air smelled like dying leaves and coming snow, that crisp bite that gets in your nostrils and wakes up every nerve. Copy, dispatch, ETA to trailhead 15 minutes. What's the LKP on the missing person? Over. Last known position grid reference 453558 north 121.7603 west. Subject was camping alone, experienced hiker. Tent found undisturbed, personal items still inside, no signs of struggle. Over. My gut tightened. In 12 years, I'd learned that the worst cases were always the quiet ones. No screams, no blood, no obvious explanation. Just empty space where a person used to be. I drove Highway 26 through Douglas fir stands that stretched up like cathedral columns, my coffee going cold in the cup holder. The radio chattered with morning reports, weather updates, routine patrol check-ins, nothing unusual. But something felt off. The static between transmissions seemed heavier today, more persistent. At Cascade Falls Trailhead, I met Megan's parents, Dave and Linda Patterson. Dave was pacing the parking lot like a caged animal, his Carhartt jacket still damp with dew from an obvious sleepless night spent waiting. Linda sat in their Subaru, staring at her daughter's photo on her phone screen. When she looked up at me, her eyes were red-rimmed and desperate. "Please," Linda whispered, gripping my forearm. "She's all we have. Megan's not reckless. She wouldn't just disappear." I'd given this speech 100 times, but looking into Linda's face, I felt the familiar weight of responsibility settle on my shoulders. "Ma'am, I've been doing this for 12 years. I'll find her." Famous last words. The trail to Megan's campsite wound through old-growth forest, the kind of timber that makes you feel like an ant. My radio squawked occasionally with routine traffic, other units reporting normal patrol activities, weather updates, the usual morning chatter. But between the official transmissions, I started hearing something else. Static, but not normal static. It came in patterns, almost like breathing. I shook it off. Radios pick up interference all the time. CB transmissions, atmospheric conditions, electrical storms. Nothing unusual. I kept hiking. Megan's camp was exactly as reported. North face tent perfectly staked, sleeping bag neatly rolled, camp stove clean and properly stored. Her backpack contained everything it should: extra clothes, toiletries, food for 3 days, water purification tablets. Her cell phone was there too. Dead battery. Normal. What wasn't normal was the silence. In 12 years of mountain work, I'd never experienced such complete quiet. No bird calls, no squirrel chatter, no insect buzz. Even the wind seemed muted. The forest felt empty, like something had scared away every living thing. I keyed my radio. Unit 47 to dispatch, at subject's campsite. No signs of disturbance. Beginning systematic grid search north of position. Over. The response came back weird, choppy, full of interference. Copy. Unit 7. Proceed with caution, weather, changing. Dispatch Unit 47, you're breaking up. Please repeat. Over. Nothing but static. I tried my cell phone. No signal. Not unusual at this elevation, but still made my skin crawl. Something about being cut off from the outside world, even temporarily, triggered an unfamiliar sensation in my chest. Not fear exactly, more like unease. I started my search pattern, moving in expanding squares from Megan's camp. Standard procedure. Look for footprints, disturbed vegetation, torn clothing, blood, anything that might indicate direction of travel or signs of struggle. Instead, I found something else. Footprints, yes, but not just Megan's size 8 hiking boots. These were larger. Men's boots, maybe size 11. The treads were strange, deep geometric patterns I didn't recognize. They appeared about 50 yards north of camp, coming from deeper in the forest, then paralleling Megan's trail for several hundred feet before both sets of prints simply ended, not at a cliff or water crossing or rocky terrain. They just stopped, in the middle of a clear dirt path. My radio crackled again. Help, please help me. I'm lost. I froze. The voice was female, young, terrified. But the transmission was wrong. No call sign, no proper protocol. And the voice quality was strange. Too clear, too close, like the speaker was whispering directly into the microphone. I keyed my radio immediately. This is Unit 47, identify yourself. What's your location? Over. Static. Unit 47 to any unit with female hiker in distress. Please respond. Over. More static. Then, please. It's so cold. I can't find my way back. The voice was clearer this time, and I realized with a chill that made my hands shake, something I'd never experienced in 12 years of mountain work, that the voice sounded exactly like the description Megan's parents had given me. Young, soft-spoken, with just a trace of a southern accent. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in Joshua's situation? Comment below. I started moving toward the voice, though I realized I had no idea which direction it was coming from. Radio transmissions don't have direction. They just exist in your ear, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm a park ranger. Keep talking so I can find you. The reply came immediately. Thank God, I'm near some big rocks. There's a creek. I think I'm lost. Big rocks and a creek. That described half the mountain. But I knew the area. There were several creek crossings within a mile radius. I started hiking toward the nearest one, following a game trail that wound through increasingly dense timber. My boots crunched through layers of fallen leaves. Maple, oak, Douglas fir needles. The sound seemed unnaturally loud in the silence. With each step, I felt like something was watching me. The skin on the back of my neck prickled constantly. Keep talking, I called into my radio. I'm coming to find you. What are you wearing? Blue jacket, jeans. Please hurry. Something's wrong here. Blue jacket. Linda Patterson had mentioned Megan was wearing a blue North Face shell. This had to be her. But as I hiked, something nagged at me. The voice was too calm for someone who'd been lost overnight. Too controlled. In my experience, people genuinely lost in the wilderness were hysterical by the time rescuers found them. This voice had an odd, dreamy quality. I reached the first creek crossing, a small stream that trickled over granite boulders. No sign of anyone, no footprints in the muddy banks. "Hello? Are you near the water?" I called out loud, not using the radio. No response. I keyed the radio again. "This is Unit 47, I'm at the creek. Where exactly are you?" The response made my blood freeze. "I can see you, Joshua." She'd used my name, but I'd never given my name over the radio. Standard protocol was unit numbers only, and her voice had changed. Still young, still female, but now there was something else underneath it. Something cold and amused. I spun around, scanning the forest. Nothing but trees and shadows. "How do you know my name?" Laughter came through the radio. Not human laughter. It started high-pitched and feminine, then dropped to something deeper, older, wrong. I tried switching radio channels. The laughter followed me to every frequency. My hands were shaking now, not from cold, but from something I'd never experienced in 12 years of fearless mountain work. The feeling that I was being played, manipulated, led somewhere I didn't want to go. I started hiking back toward the trailhead, moving faster than was safe on the rocky terrain. Behind me, I could swear I heard footsteps matching my pace, but every time I turned around, the forest was empty. The radio crackled again. "Don't leave, Joshua. Megan needs your help." This time the voice was different again. Male. Deeper. With an accent I couldn't place. Something old-fashioned, like recordings from the 1940s. "Who is this? Identify yourself immediately." "I'm the one who's been calling, Joshua. All those years, all those rescues. Every time you heard a voice crying for help in the wilderness, that was me." My throat went dry. I thought about every search and rescue operation I'd led. Dozens of them. All starting with radio calls for help. Voices in distress. People lost and scared and desperate for rescue. My specialty was finding people when everyone else had given up. I'd built my reputation on never ignoring a call for help. And now this thing was telling me it had been manipulating me for years. "Where is Megan Patterson?" "She came when I called, just like you're doing now. Such a good girl. So trusting." She heard her grandmother's voice calling for help and walked right into the deep woods. The radio crackled with what sounded like an old woman's voice. "Megan, honey, I'm lost. Please help me find the path." My stomach lurched. I keyed the radio with shaking hands. "What are you? What do you want?" "I want what I've always wanted, Joshua. Someone to hear my voice. Someone to answer when I call. The forest gets so lonely, you see, so very, very lonely." I was moving faster now, almost jogging down the trail. But the path seemed wrong, longer than it should be. The trees looked different, taller, darker, older. I checked my GPS. The device showed I was still moving toward the trailhead, but the distance wasn't decreasing. "You can't leave, Joshua, not now. Not when you're so close to finding her." "Finding who?" "All of them." The radio went silent for several minutes, just static and the sound of my own panicked breathing. Then very faintly I started hearing voices. Lots of voices. Men, women, children, all calling for help. All lost. All scared. "Tommy's been missing for 3 days. Please, someone help us find Tommy. My wife wandered away from camp. She has Alzheimer's. Please. The kids went hiking and never came back. Oh God, please find my babies." Dozens of voices. All the missing persons cases from the past decade. All the searches I'd led. And slowly I realized the horrible truth. None of those people had ever been found. I'd spent days, weeks, searching for them, following radio calls deeper and deeper into the wilderness. But we'd never found bodies, never found evidence. The searches had always just ended. I'd thought it was the wilderness being wilderness. People fall into ravines, get swept away by rivers, eaten by predators. Bodies disappear. It happens. But what if they hadn't disappeared randomly? What if they'd all been called just like I was being called now? My GPS was spinning now, the needle rotating wildly. The trail beneath my feet seemed to be moving, shifting like a living thing. The trees pressed closer on both sides, branches reaching out to snag my jacket. I tried to run. Behind me, the radio voices grew louder, more desperate. "Joshua, please don't leave us. We're so scared. It's so cold here. Help us, Joshua. You're our only hope." And underneath all the human voices, something else. Something that sounded like radio static but wasn't. It was breathing. Slow, deep breathing, like something enormous sleeping and dreaming. I stumbled and fell, my radio flying from my belt and shattering against a rock. The voices stopped instantly. The forest fell into that unnatural silence again. But in the silence, I could hear something worse. Footsteps. All around me. Dozens of people walking through the forest, but I couldn't see anyone. The sound of boots on leaves, branches snapping, people breathing. An invisible crowd surrounding me in the darkness between the trees. I got to my feet and ran harder than I'd ever run in my life. Branches tore at my face. Roots tried to trip me, but I kept going, following what I hoped was the path back to civilization. The footsteps followed me, always just behind, never quite catching up, like they were hurting me somewhere specific. After what felt like hours, I saw a light ahead, the parking lot, my truck. I burst out of the tree line like a man escaping hell itself. Dave and Linda Patterson were still there, now joined by other search teams. They looked up hopefully when they saw me. "Did you find her?" Linda asked. I opened my mouth to tell them about the radio voices, the thing in the forest, the trap I'd nearly walked into. But no words came out. How do you explain something like that? How do you tell parents that their daughter was lured into the woods by something pretending to be human? Instead, I heard myself say, "I need to organize a bigger search, get more people up there." But even as I said it, I knew the truth. There would be no more searching. Whatever was in those woods had Megan now, along with all the others. And it would keep calling, keep using their voices, keep luring rescuers deeper into its domain. I drove home to Sarah that night and held her close, breathing in the scent of her shampoo, feeling her heartbeat against my chest. For the first time in 12 years, I was afraid. Not of the wilderness, not of bears or storms or falling rocks. I was afraid of my own radio. 3 days later, I put in for a transfer to a desk job in Portland. When people asked why, I told them I was getting too old for mountain work, that I wanted to spend more time with family. I never told them about the voices. But sometimes late at night when Sarah's asleep, I still hear them, faintly, like distant radio transmissions bleeding through the static. All the lost people calling my name, begging me to come back and find them. And sometimes when the house is very quiet, I hear Megan's voice among them. Still young, still scared, still calling for help. But I don't answer anymore. I can't, because now I know the truth. In that forest, there's something that's been collecting lost souls for decades. Something that uses our own compassion against us, our need to help, our inability to ignore a cry for help. And it's still out there, still calling, still waiting for the next good person to answer its radio. The worst part? Sometimes I'm tempted to go back, to take my radio and hike into those dark woods one more time. Because those voices, they sound so real, so desperate. And what if this time is different? What if this time I could actually save them? That's the trap, isn't it? That's how it gets you. It makes you believe you're the hero of the story, right up until the moment you realize you're just another voice in its collection. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Megan. I read every single one. My name is James, and I saw Amanda disappear 3 meters in front of me on the trail before she just vanished. That was 6 hours ago. 6 hours of my radio crackling with static, my hands shaking as I gripped my GPS unit, and my mind cycling through the same impossible question. Did that really happen? I've been a forest ranger for 12 years. I've seen things that would make most people question their sanity. Hell, I've questioned mine plenty of times. 3 years ago, on the Devil's Backbone Trail, I encountered something that shouldn't exist. Something that wore faces like masks, and spoke in voices that belonged to the dead. The department shrink said it was stress-induced hallucinations, acute psychological break brought on by isolation and responsibility pressure. I almost believed him. But Amanda Miller, 24 years old, brown hair in a messy bun, wearing a red North Face jacket and black hiking boots, was real. I have her registration form in my jacket pocket. Timestamp 7:23 a.m. She signed in at the Cascade Falls trailhead, planning a solo day hike to Mirror Lake. I found her at 10:47 a.m., mile marker 3.2, right where the main trail splits toward the old logging road. She was crouched down, tying her boot, completely oblivious to the fact that she'd been reported missing by her worried boyfriend 2 hours earlier. "Excuse me, miss? Are you Amanda Miller?" She looked up, smiled. Perfect white teeth, green eyes that caught the morning light filtering through the pine canopy. "Yes, that's me. Is something wrong?" "Your boyfriend called. He was worried when you didn't check in." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Tyler worries too much. I'm fine, really. Just enjoying the quiet." I radioed in. "Unit 23 to dispatch, I've located the missing hiker. She's safe and continuing her planned route." "Copy that, Unit 23. Good work." Amanda stood up, shouldering her small day pack. "Thanks for checking on me, Ranger O. James Morrison." "Well, Ranger James Morrison, I appreciate it." She started walking ahead of me on the trail. Standard protocol would have been to escort her back, but she was an adult, well-prepared, and it was a clear, warm September day. No weather concerns, no park closures. I followed about 10 feet behind, doing my routine trail maintenance check, fallen branches, erosion markers, wildlife sign. Normal ranger stuff. My boots crunched on the carpet of pine needles and fallen leaves. The air smelled like autumn, that mix of dying leaves, cool earth, and the faint sweetness of mountain wildflowers going to seed. Amanda moved with confidence ahead of me. She knew the trail, checked her map at appropriate intervals, stopped to drink water regularly. Everything by the book. That's when it happened. Between one step and the next, she was just gone. Not vanished in a puff of smoke. Not grabbed by something. Not fallen into a hole or behind a tree. Gone. Like she'd been edited out of existence. I stood there for maybe 30 seconds, my brain refusing to process what I'd just witnessed. My coffee-bitter saliva turned metallic with fear. The forest went dead quiet. No bird songs, no rustling leaves, no distant water sounds from Cascade Creek. "Amanda?" My voice cracked. "Amanda?" Nothing. I ran to where she'd been walking. Her footprints were clear in the soft dirt. Size 7 Merrell hiking boots with a distinctive tread pattern I'd been following for the past mile. They just stopped, mid-stride, like she'd been lifted straight up into the air. My hands started shaking as I keyed my radio. "Unit 23 to dispatch." "Go ahead, Unit 23. I need backup at mile marker 3.2 on Cascade Trail. I've lost visual on the hiker." "Copy that." "Lost visual? Did she go off trail?" I stared at the empty space where Amanda Miller had been walking 2 minutes earlier. My heart hammered against my ribs. Sweat beaded on my forehead despite the cool morning air. Negative. She was right in front of me, and then she wasn't. Static. Then, "Unit 23, are you requesting search and rescue?" The smart answer was yes. Call in the cavalry. Coordinate a grid search. Treat this like any other missing person case. But the footprints ending mid-stride, the absolute silence of the forest, the way the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees in the span of a heartbeat, this wasn't any other missing person case. This was happening again. "Unit 23? "Yes, dispatch. Request immediate SAR response to my location." "Copy that. ETA 20 minutes. I clipped my radio back to my belt and tried to think logically. People don't just disappear. There had to be an explanation. Maybe she'd doubled back while I was looking at something else. Maybe she'd gone off trail for a bathroom break. Maybe my mind was playing tricks on me again, like Dr. Kellerman warned it might. I started a systematic search pattern. moving in ever-widening circles from Amanda's last footprint. Called her name every 30 seconds, checked GPS coordinates, took photographs of the scene with my department-issued digital camera. That's when I heard her voice. "Ranger Morrison, I'm over here." I spun around. Amanda was standing about 50 yards uphill, waving at me with that same bright smile. Red jacket, black boots, messy brown hair, exactly as she'd been 20 minutes ago. Relief flooded through me so fast I almost fell over. "Jesus Christ, Amanda, where did you go? I lost sight of you and—" "I went off trail to use the bathroom," she said, walking down toward me. "Sorry if I scared you." But something was wrong. Her voice was slightly off. The same tone, same words she might naturally say, but the rhythm was different. Like someone doing a really good impression of Amanda Miller instead of Amanda Miller herself. And her eyes weren't quite right. Still green, still bright, but they seemed to be looking through me instead of at me. Like she was reading cue cards positioned just behind my head. "Where exactly did you go?" I asked, my hand unconsciously drifting toward my radio. "Just through those trees." She pointed vaguely uphill. "Why? Is something wrong?" I looked where she'd pointed. Thick underbrush, fallen logs, no clear path. Anyone crashing through that tangle would have made noise I'd have heard, would have come out with burrs and scratches on their clothes. Amanda's red jacket was pristine. "Show me," I said. Her smile flickered for just a moment. "Show you what?" "Show me where you went." "I don't think that's necessary, Ranger Morrison. I'm fine, and I'd like to continue my hike now." The way she said my name, formal, distant, was wrong. 10 minutes ago she'd called me Ranger James Morrison, then just James. Now it was back to the full formal title, like we'd never talked before. "I need to document the incident for my report," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Department protocol." She studied me with those not quite right eyes. "Of course, lead the way." I started uphill toward the area she'd pointed to, my boots slipping on the loose pine needles and fallen leaves. Behind me, I could hear her following, but her footsteps sounded wrong too. Too quiet for someone wearing hiking boots. Too regular, like a metronome. The underbrush was even thicker than it had looked from the trail. Manzanita bushes with branches thick as my wrist, fallen ponderosa pine trunks creating natural barriers, dense clusters of young fir trees growing so close together you couldn't squeeze between them. "This way," Amanda said behind me. I turned around. She was pointing to an opening I could have sworn wasn't there 30 seconds ago. A narrow gap between two granite boulders that led deeper into the woods. Every instinct screamed at me not to follow her. This was how people disappeared in forests. They followed familiar voices into places they shouldn't go, and their bodies turned up months later, if at all. But Amanda Miller was my responsibility. Real or not, whoever or whatever this was, I couldn't just walk away. If this story is giving you chills, smash that follow button for more supernatural horror. What would you do in James's situation? Comment below. I squeezed through the gap between the boulders. The temperature dropped immediately, from maybe 60 degrees to something closer to 40. My breath started misting in the suddenly frigid air. The trees grew differently here too, twisted and stunted like they were struggling to grow in poisoned soil. "Right through here?" Amanda said, her voice echoing strangely off the rocks. We emerged into a small clearing maybe 30 yards across. At the center stood a single dead tree, its branches reaching up like skeletal fingers. Hanging from those branches were photographs, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All different sizes and ages, some color, some black and white, some so old they'd turned sepia. They fluttered in a breeze I couldn't feel, making a soft, papery whisper that raised the hair on my arms. I stepped closer to get a better look. They were all of me. Me as a child, maybe 7 years old, sitting on my father's shoulders at some long-forgotten family picnic. Me in my high school graduation cap and gown. Me on my wedding day, kissing Sarah at the altar of St. Mark's Lutheran. Me holding my newborn daughter Lily in the hospital, tears streaming down my face. Me in my forest ranger uniform on my first day of work. But there were other photos too. Photos of things that had never happened. Me shaking hands with a man I'd never met. Me standing in front of a house I'd never seen. Me with gray hair and wrinkles, aged decades beyond my current 34 years. Me lying in what looked like a coffin, eyes closed, hands folded across my chest. "Beautiful collection, isn't it?" Amanda said. I spun around. She was standing at the edge of the clearing, but she looked different now. Her face was subtly wrong. Features slightly too sharp, smile slightly too wide, eyes slightly too bright. Like someone had tried to reconstruct Amanda Miller from a description instead of a photograph. "Who are you?" I whispered. "I'm Amanda Miller," she said, 24 years old, from Sacramento. "I love hiking and photography, and my boyfriend Tyler." Her voice had taken on a sing-song quality, like she was reciting from a script. "I signed in at the Cascade Falls trailhead at 7:23 a.m. for a solo day hike to Mirror Lake." "No, you're not." Her smile widened even more, stretching her face in ways human faces shouldn't stretch. "Of course I am. Just like your ranger James Morrison, married to Sarah, father to Lily, carrier of deep trauma from supernatural encounters that officially never happened." My hand was on my radio before I consciously decided to reach for it. "Unit 23 to dispatch." Static. "Unit 23 to dispatch, emergency assistance needed at..." I looked at my GPS. The screen was blank. "Unit 23 to anyone, please respond." More static than a voice that might have been dispatch but sounded distorted, like it was coming through water. "Unit 23, we show you at your assigned location. Is there a problem?" "I'm not at my assigned location. I'm in some kind of clearing with..." "Unit 23, GPS shows you conducting normal trail maintenance at mile marker 3.2. All appears normal." I looked at my GPS again. Still blank. But somehow dispatch was getting different information. "Listen to me," I said into the radio. "The missing hiker, Amanda Miller, she's not..." The radio went dead. Not static, not crackling, just silence. Amanda, who wasn't Amanda, laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "They can't hear you, James. We're not exactly in the same place anymore." I looked around the clearing again. The photographs hanging from the dead tree were moving now, rearranging themselves. New pictures were appearing. Photos of my wife Sarah, my daughter Lily, my parents, my brother Mark, all of them in situations I'd never seen them in. Sarah standing in our kitchen, but the kitchen was wrong. Different cabinets, different color walls, different window that looked out on a landscape that definitely wasn't our neighborhood. Lily playing in a backyard I'd never seen with toys I'd never bought her. My parents at what looked like my funeral, crying over a casket I sincerely hoped was empty. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want to be you," Amanda said. "All of you. Every person you've ever loved, ever met, ever thought about. I want to wear their faces and live their lives and be them so completely that even they forget who they used to be." She started walking toward me, and with each step she changed. Her face shifted, features rearranging themselves like clay. First she looked like my wife Sarah. Same brown hair, same laugh lines around her eyes, same small scar on her chin from falling off her bike as a kid. "Hello, honey," she said in Sarah's voice. "I've been worried about you." I backed away, but there was nowhere to go. The clearing seemed smaller now, the trees pressing in from all sides. "James, what's wrong?" she asked, still wearing Sarah's face but walking wrong, moving too fluidly. "You look like you've seen a ghost." Then she was Lily, my 8-year-old daughter, pigtails and missing front teeth, and the faded grass stains on the knees of her favorite jeans. "Daddy, why are you scared of me?" I closed my eyes, but I could still hear her voice cycling through every person I'd ever cared about. My brother Mark asking why I wasn't returning his calls. My mother wondering when I was going to visit. My father telling me he was proud of me. Dr. Kellerman asking about my stress levels and sleep patterns. "Stop," I whispered. "I can be anyone you want me to be, James. I can be everyone you want me to be. All I need is for you to let me." I opened my eyes. She was Amanda again, but the real Amanda this time. Not the slightly wrong version from earlier, but exactly as she'd been on the trail, down to the loose thread on her jacket sleeve and the small mud stain on her left boot. "Please," she said, and her voice broke with genuine fear. "Help me. I don't know where I am. I was hiking and then I was somewhere else. Somewhere dark, and there were all these voices, all these faces, and something was trying to get inside my head." Tears were streaming down her cheeks. Real tears. Not the perfect crystalline drops you see in movies. Messy, snotty, desperate tears. "I can still feel it in there," she whispered. "Something moving around in my thoughts. Learning how to be me. Please, you have to get me out of here." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe that this was the real Amanda, that I could save her, that I could do something right for once instead of standing helplessly while people disappeared. But I'd been fooled before. 3 years ago, on Devil's Backbone Trail, I'd followed my own brother's voice into the woods, spent 6 hours talking to something that looked and sounded exactly like Mark, right down to the way he always drummed his fingers on his leg when he was nervous. It wasn't until I got home and found 17 missed calls from Mark on my phone that I realized what had happened. "How do I know you're real?" I asked. "Because I'm scared," she said. "Because I don't understand what's happening. Because I just want to go home to Tyler and tell him about this crazy dream I had where forest rangers could walk through dimensions and there were trees covered in photographs of strangers." She knew details she shouldn't know, about the photographs, about the wrongness of this place. Either she was the real Amanda or the thing imitating her was getting better at its job. "Tell me something only the real Amanda would know," I said. "Like what? I just met you an hour ago." "Something from when we talked on the trail." She wiped her nose on her jacket sleeve. "You said your name was James Morrison. I thanked you for checking on me because Tyler worries too much." She paused, thinking. "You were doing trail maintenance. Something about fallen branches and erosion markers." All things the imposter could have learned by watching our earlier conversation. "What did you call me first, when I asked your name?" She looked confused. "Ranger Morrison?" Wrong. She'd called me Ranger James Morrison first, then just James. This wasn't Amanda. I started backing away again. "James, wait," she called. "Please don't leave me here, I don't know how to get back." But her voice was already changing again, cycling through other people I knew. By the time I reached the gap between the boulders, she sounded like my dead grandmother, calling me by my childhood nickname and asking why I never visited her grave anymore. I squeezed through the gap and ran. Behind me, the voices multiplied. Dozens of people I knew, all calling my name, all asking me to wait, to help them, to take them home. The photographs rustled louder, the paper whispers becoming a roar like wind through dead leaves. I crashed through the underbrush, branches tearing at my jacket, roots catching my boots. My radio crackled back to life as I got further from the clearing. "Unit 23, what's your status?" I keyed the mic while still running. "Unit 23 requesting immediate backup. The missing hiker is... The situation is not what it appears." "Copy that, Unit 23. Can you elaborate?" "How do you explain the unexplainable to dispatch? How do you tell them that Amanda Miller was being held prisoner in a dimensional pocket by something that collected people like photographs?" "The hiker may be in the company of a dangerous individual," I said finally. "Request full SR response and local law enforcement." "Copy. ETA 15 minutes. I reached the main trail and stopped, gasping for breath. My GPS was working again, showing my correct location at mile marker 3.2. Everything looked normal. The same pine trees, the same carpet of needles and fallen leaves, the same morning sunlight filtering through the canopy. But Amanda's footprints were gone. Not just the ones that had stopped mid-stride. All of them. The trail showed no sign that anyone had walked this section since the last rainfall 3 days ago. I took out my digital camera and scrolled through the photos I'd taken of the scene. Empty trail. No footprints. No evidence that Amanda Miller had ever been here. My hands started shaking again. Either I was having another breakdown, or something was systematically erasing proof of Amanda's existence. "Ranger Morrison?" I spun around. Amanda was standing on the trail about 20 yards downhill, waving at me. Same red jacket, same bright smile. But this time I was ready for her. "Stay right there," I called, unclipping my radio. "Unit 23 to dispatch." "Go ahead, Unit 23. I have visual on the missing hiker. She appears unharmed, but I need that backup ASAP." "Copy that. Backup is en route." Amanda started walking toward me. "Is everything okay? You look upset." "Just stay where you are, please." She stopped, tilting her head like a curious dog. "Why? Did I do something wrong?" Her face was perfect this time. Not slightly off like before, not too sharp or too bright. She looked exactly like she had when I first found her on the trail. The thing was learning, getting better at mimicking human appearance and behavior. "I'm going to ask you some questions," I said, "for my report." "Of course. What's your boyfriend's name?" "Tyler." "What time did you sign in at the trailhead?" 7:23 a.m. "What kind of boots are you wearing?" She glanced down. Merrill hiking boots, black, size 7. All correct answers. All information the real Amanda had given me, or that could be observed. I needed something deeper. "What did you have for breakfast this morning?" She paused for just a moment too long. "Oatmeal, with blueberries." Maybe true, maybe not. I tried another approach. "Tell me about Tyler. How long have you been dating?" 2 years next month. We met at a coffee shop near the university. He was reading Hemingway and spilled espresso on his shirt when I sat down at the next table. Her smile was warm, genuine. "He's sweet. Worries too much, but sweet." The level of detail was impressive, but it felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced telling Amanda's life story until she could recite it perfectly. In the distance, I could hear the sound of vehicles approaching. The cavalry was coming. "One more question," I said. "What's the last thing you remember before I found you?" Another pause. Longer this time. "I was tying my boot," she said finally. "You came up behind me and asked if I was Amanda Miller. And then we talked. About Tyler. About the trail. And then you left me to continue my hike, and I got turned around somehow and..." She looked confused, like she was trying to remember a dream. "I'm not sure how I ended up back here." She was lying, or the real Amanda was trapped somewhere, and this was the thing trying to fill in gaps in her stolen memories. The sound of vehicles was getting closer. Multiple engines, probably the SAR team plus local sheriff's deputies. In a few minutes, this stretch of trail would be crawling with people who would all see exactly what I was seeing. A lost hiker who looked and sounded exactly like Amanda Miller. How do you explain to a room full of rational adults that the person standing in front of you isn't who they appear to be? How do you convince them that somewhere in the spaces between spaces, the real Amanda might still be alive and waiting for rescue? "Amanda," I said carefully, "I'm going to need you to come with me. There are some people who want to talk to you." "Of course." She started walking toward me again. "Thank you for finding me, Ranger Morrison. I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't..." She stopped mid-sentence. Her face went blank like someone had just powered down a robot. For maybe 5 seconds she stood perfectly still, not even breathing. Then she smiled again. But it was wrong. Too wide, too knowing. "I don't know what I would have done if you hadn't come looking for me," she finished. But her voice had changed. Subtle difference, but I caught it. Like she'd switched to a different recording of the same words. The first SR vehicle crested the hill, a white Forest Service truck with light bar flashing. Behind it, a Sheriff's Department SUV. Behind that, what looked like a fire department rescue unit. "Backup's here," I told Amanda. "I can see that." She was watching the approaching vehicles with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Are they here for me?" "They're here to make sure you're safe." "And are you sure I'm safe, Ranger Morrison?" The way she asked the question made my skin crawl. Not, "Am I safe?" but, "Are you sure I'm safe?" Like she was asking whether I'd figured out what she really was. The lead truck pulled to a stop about 50 yards uphill. 2 rangers climbed out. Dave Chen, who I'd worked with for 6 years, and Rebecca Martinez, the newest member of our team. Behind them, Sheriff's Deputy Tom Walsh and a paramedic I didn't recognize. "James," Dave called. "You okay down there?" "All good," I called back. Found our missing hiker. The team started walking down the trail toward us. Standard procedure. Paramedic would check Amanda for injuries. Deputy would take a statement. Rangers would coordinate getting her back to the trailhead safely. But as they got closer, I noticed something wrong with their faces. They looked like Dave and Rebecca and Tom, but the details were slightly off. Dave's eyes were a little too close together. Rebecca's nose was a bit too narrow. Tom's mouth was asymmetrical in a way I'd never noticed before. "Jesus Christ," I whispered. "Something wrong?" Amanda asked, and now her voice carried a note of amusement. The approaching team was maybe 30 yards away now. Close enough that I should have been able to see their faces clearly, but they kept seeming to shift and blur whenever I looked directly at them, like looking at people through heat distortion. "Dave," I called, "can you confirm your unit number?" The person who looked like Dave paused. "Unit 47. Wrong. Dave was Unit 12, had been for 3 years. "Rebecca, what's the radio code for medical emergency?" "Code 7. Wrong again. Code 7 was fire emergency. Medical was Code 9. They were all imposters. Perfect physical copies, but without access to the real people's memories and knowledge. I keyed my radio. Unit 23 to dispatch. Static. Unit 23 to dispatch, emergency. More static than a voice that sounded like dispatch but wasn't quite right. Unit 23, we show backup has arrived at your location. Status? Negative, dispatch. I need additional units. The backup team is compromised. Unit 23, please clarify. GPS shows 4 department personnel and 1 civilian at your location. All appears normal. I looked at my GPS. According to the screen, I was exactly where I was supposed to be, surrounded by exactly the people who were supposed to be here. But my eyes were telling me something different. The fake rescue team was close enough to touch now. Up close, their wrongness was even more apparent. They moved too smoothly, blinked too infrequently, and their skin had a waxy, artificial sheen. "Hello, James," the fake Dave said. "We're here to take Amanda home." "And to take you home too," the fake Rebecca added. "You've been out here too long. Your family is worried about you." "My family?" The fake Tom stepped forward. He was holding a photograph, a picture of me with Sarah and Lily, but we were standing in front of a house I'd never seen, in a yard I'd never been in. "Your wife called," he said. "She wants you to come home now." I looked at Amanda. She was watching the exchange with obvious fascination, like she was studying how the imposters interacted with their target. "How many of you are there?" I asked her. "Enough," she said simply. The fake rescue team was closing in from uphill. Amanda was blocking my path downhill. The forest pressed in from both sides, too thick to run through. I was trapped. But I still had my radio, and even if the voice on the other end wasn't really dispatch, someone in the real world was monitoring these frequencies. Someone would hear. "Unit 23 to anyone listening," I said into the radio. "My name is James Morrison, Forest Service Ranger, employee number 4471. I am currently at GPS coordinates." I read the numbers off my device. "I am surrounded by entities that are impersonating my colleagues and attempting to abduct me. If anyone is receiving this transmission, please send help." The fake Dave laughed. "No one's listening, James. No one's coming. And even if they did, what would they find? Just a ranger having a psychological breakdown in the middle of the forest, talking to people who aren't there." "Amanda Miller is still alive," I continued into the radio, ignoring him. "She's being held by these entities in some kind of dimensional pocket. She needs rescue." "There is no Amanda Miller," the fake Rebecca said gently. "You created her, James. Another stress-induced hallucination, just like the ones you had 3 years ago. But I had proof this time. The registration form in my pocket signed by Amanda herself. I pulled it out with trembling fingers. The paper was blank. "No," I whispered. "No, she was real. She signed in at 7:23. I have her information right here." You have a blank piece of paper, the fake Tom said, just like before. I stared at the empty form. Had I imagined all of it? The hiker on the trail, the conversation, the impossible disappearance? Was my mind finally snapping under the weight of isolation and responsibility, and the things I'd seen that couldn't be explained? The photographs, I said. In the clearing. There were photographs hanging from a tree. What clearing? Amanda asked. What tree? I pointed toward the gap between the boulders where I'd followed her earlier, but there was no gap, just solid wall of granite and trees, no way through. There, I insisted. Right there. We went through the rocks. The imposters exchanged glances. Patient, sympathetic glances. The kind of looks you give someone who's clearly having a mental health crisis. James, the fake Dave said gently, you've been standing right here for the past 20 minutes. You called in a missing hiker who doesn't exist, then started talking to yourself. We're worried about you. That's not what happened. Then tell us what did happen, the fake Rebecca said. In your own words. I tried to remember. Amanda on the trail, tying her boot. Our conversation. Her disappearance. Following her voice to the clearing. The tree covered in photographs of my life. But the memories felt slippery now, like trying to hold water in cupped hands. The more I focused on them, the more they seemed to change. Had Amanda really been wearing a red jacket, or was I thinking of someone else? Had she actually vanished, or had I just lost track of her in the woods? You need help, the fake Tom said. Professional help. We're going to take you somewhere safe. I'm not going anywhere with you. You don't have a choice, Amanda said, and her voice was colder now. You've seen too much. You know too much, and you're too broken to be a reliable witness. She started walking toward me, and as she moved, her face began to change again. Not cycling through different people this time, but dissolving. Features melting away like wax in a fire, revealing something underneath that was definitely not human. The thing beneath Amanda's stolen face was pale and smooth as an egg. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just blank skin stretched over a skull-shaped void. But somehow I could still hear her voice coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Thank you for showing me how to be human, she said. I've learned so much from you. About fear, about doubt, about the way people can be convinced that their own memories are lies. The fake rescue team was moving closer, their faces beginning to melt away as well. Underneath, they were all the same. Blank, featureless, impossible. What are you? I whispered. We are what remains when identity is stripped away, the Amanda thing said. We are the space between who you are and who you think you are. We are the doubt that makes you question your own sanity. My radio crackled to life one more time, but instead of dispatch, I heard my own voice speaking. Unit 23 to dispatch. False alarm on the missing hiker. I was confused. Everything's fine out here. I didn't say that, I told the imposters. Yes, you did, they said in unison, their blank faces turning toward me. You just don't remember. And the terrible thing was, I could almost believe them. The day felt dreamlike now, full of gaps and inconsistencies. Had I really seen Amanda disappear, or had I imagined it? Had there really been a clearing full of photographs, or was that just another stress-induced hallucination? The only thing I knew for certain was that something was very wrong, and I was running out of time to figure out what. Behind the imposters, I caught a glimpse of movement in the trees. Someone else was coming down the trail, a figure in a familiar red jacket. Amanda, the real Amanda. She looked terrified, stumbling through the underbrush with branches catching at her clothes and leaves in her hair. When she saw me, her face lit up with desperate relief. Ranger Morrison, she called. Thank God. I got lost somehow and I've been trying to find the trail for hours. The imposters turned to look at her, and for the first time, I saw something like surprise in their featureless faces. That's impossible, the Amanda thing said. She's contained. She's safely stored. Apparently not, I said, backing toward the real Amanda. But as she got closer, I noticed that this Amanda looked different too. Her jacket was torn, her face was streaked with dirt, and her eyes held a wild desperation that hadn't been there before. Most importantly, she was looking at me like she'd never seen me before in her life. "Please," she said, grabbing my arm. "You have to help me. I don't know where I am. I was hiking and then I was somewhere else. Somewhere dark with all these mirrors, and there were voices trying to get inside my head." The imposters were backing away now, their forms becoming less solid, more translucent. "This isn't over," the Amanda thing said, its voice fading like a radio signal losing reception. "You can't save everyone, James. You couldn't save the others, and you can't save her." Then they were gone. Not vanished dramatically, just absent, like they'd never been there at all. I was alone on the trail with Amanda, the real Amanda, I hoped. "Are you okay?" she asked. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Maybe I have," I said. "What do you remember? From before you got lost?" "I was hiking up to Mirror Lake. I stopped to tie my boot and this ranger came along and asked if I was okay. He said my boyfriend had called, worried about me." She paused, frowning. "But that doesn't make sense. Tyler wasn't supposed to pick me up until this evening." "What did the ranger look like?" "Tall, maybe 40 years old, graying hair. He said his name was..." She concentrated. "James, something. James Morrison." My blood ran cold. "What did he look like?" "Describe him exactly." "About 6 feet tall, maybe 180 pounds. Brown eyes, gray at the temples, small scar on his left cheek." She looked at me more closely. "Actually, he looked a lot like you, but older." I touched the scar on my left cheek, the one I'd gotten falling out of a tree when I was 12. Same scar she was describing. Something had been impersonating me, using my face, my name, my identity, to lure Amanda into whatever trap had been set for her. And if it could impersonate me convincingly enough to fool someone who'd just met me, how many other people had it approached wearing my face? How many other disappearances might I be responsible for, indirectly? "We need to get out of here," I said. "Right now." I keyed my radio. "Unit 23 to dispatch." "Go ahead, Unit 23. The voice sounded normal this time. No distortion, no wrongness. Just Lisa, the day dispatcher I'd been working with for 3 years. "I have the missing hiker. She's unharmed, but we need immediate escort back to the trailhead. And I need to speak with Detective Walsh when we get back." "Copy that, Unit 23. Sending back up to your location now." Within 10 minutes, the real rescue team arrived. I could tell they were real because Dave knew that his unit number was 12, and Rebecca knew that Code 9 was medical emergency. And Tom remembered that time 2 years ago when I'd had to rescue his dog from a drainage culvert. They were real. Amanda was real. I was real. But the question that haunted me all the way back to the trailhead was, how many other versions of us were there, walking around in places between places, wearing our faces, and learning to be us? I transferred to a different forest after filing my report about the Amanda Miller incident, not because I was forced to. The department shrink cleared me for duty after a thorough evaluation, but because I couldn't walk those trails anymore without wondering who I might meet wearing a familiar face. Amanda recovered from her experience mostly. She doesn't remember much about the time she spent in what she calls the mirror place, but she's developed an aversion to photographs that her therapist says is probably temporary. I still have nightmares about blank faces and stolen identities. But I also have something else. The knowledge that sometimes when people disappear in the deep woods, it's not because they got lost or hurt or made a bad decision. Sometimes it's because something is collecting them. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very careful, and willing to trust that not everyone wearing a familiar face is who they appear to be, you can get them back. My name is James Morrison, and I know the difference between real and pretend, most of the time. Holy hell, that was intense. Did that ending blow your mind? Like, if you want more terrifying Ranger stories, follow for daily supernatural horror. And comment your theory about what really happened to Amanda. I read every single one,